Okay, so here we are at the Swinging Vine Zoo once again, and today I am going to be rebuilding the peccary, collared peccary exhibit habitat, which is right here in the middle. So we have absolutely, no way to make it any bigger, but good thing it is big enough as long as I don't take away too much of their traversable land. And here we have so many babies. Look at how cute these little ones are. There's some more over here. Yep. So adorable. So we're going to give them, oops, so they don't have enough hard shelter right now. So we're going to give them, I think, a nice big hard shelter with lots of entrances around this area here. And we'll get rid of these ones and then have their outside area over here. All right, so let's see where this takes us. If you watched the last video of the Chinese pangolin, you might be surprised to see that we are actually working on the collared peccary today, because at the end of the video I said that up next we would be working on the saltwater crocodile habitat. However, I am doing these voiceovers after I have been done the recordings for a little while. So I am kind of going back and editing a previous build, but I've already been building in other habitats. So it's kind of mixed up and I'm sometimes not really sure where I'm at. So right now actually I'm going to be showing you the collared peccary. Next up will be the giant Galapagos tortoise, and then it will be the saltwater crocodile. In this habitat, I really couldn't change the kind of the floor print of the habitat, being that it was surrounded completely by these pathways, which on the other side of the pathways were other habitats and other areas of the park, like concessions and washrooms. And so I really had to stick within the shape that I had. But as I said in the intro, it was the right size. So that was really lucky. And I wanted to just build a building in at one end of the habitat instead of those log structures that I had just kind of plunked down to give them some hard shelter. I wanted to build a proper building for them. And I had been watching a lot of Cesar creates and other zoo creators online, and I got inspired to create this area inside that had individual pens. So there would be multiple doors from the outside coming into the building, and each one would lead to a separate individual pen, and that could be closed off. So when the animals were called in at night, for example, you could close those outside doors, and there would be either individuals or small groups in the separate pens that could just be cozy and safe for the night. And I didn't have any of the packs at this point. I just was working with the base game, and I couldn't find a gate. So I created this gate out of slats of wood and used some of the metal pieces for a latch and a few other metal pieces, these metal signs for hinges to look like hinges from the other side. And then I set that up as the gate for each of the pens. However, the keepers can't actually open these gates, so the animals wouldn't be able to get in or out of this area. So later on in the build, I just prop them open so that the animals can flow in and out easily, and the keepers can access those areas too. However, the keepers could fill the food plate, the food bowls, the food dishes in those areas, even if the gates were closed. They would kind of just walk by and dump their bucket, and their food would magically transport over to the feeding trays. So they didn't really need to get in. And the same goes for cleaning. They would just kind of clean around the pens, and all of the pens would magically get cleaned. Next, you can see I'm having the same problem that I had in a few other habitats that I've built. The Chinese pangolin, especially, I had difficulty with the gate setting it up. So in this one as well, I had to fiddle with that quite a bit to get that to connect to the path, and then just kind of change the angle of that door piece so that it would line up. When I was putting these log pieces around the windows in the front of the building, I learned something kind of neat about the way some pieces rotate, and which was actually really helpful for me to when I was copying these pieces around. So it doesn't work for all pieces, and I don't really know why, but some pieces, when I copy them with the advanced move tool and then slide them down, they rotate on an axis from the end of the piece, and while others, for some reason, rotate at the middle of the piece. So if I do have a piece that rotates from the end, I can just slide it, I can copy it and slide it down into place so the end lines up with where I want it to be, and then just rotate the piece so that it slides into place at the angle that I want it to be at. So it works really, really well. So you can see that I've done that here around the front of the building. Like I said, it doesn't always work. Often the pieces rotate at the middle. And so in that case, I have to rotate it, line it up, and then move it into place. But when it does work, it's pretty satisfying actually to be able to just copy a piece all the way around like that. And now I'm moving on to something that is far less satisfying, the roof. However, I was watching ZSH Plays and got this little tip for making a roof a little bit more interesting. Um, so had created my flat roof with those clad metal pieces, and then just erased the middle section and popped it up with one short section of glass windows, and it just added so much more visual interest to the roof. And then I thought that that was enough for that section, but maybe I could add some kind of ventilation system on the roof on the two sides that still had kind of a big flat area. So here I'm working on what I'm hoping eventually will look like a vent, and just working with these art pieces in their original color for now, just because I could see them a little bit better that way. And then planning to change them all to gray, and then kind of just really hating what I made and deleting the whole thing and starting over. So, again, this is the second design for a vent of some kind for the roof. And I thought that if I could make something that looked halfway decent, then I could just copy it and carry it through kind of the whole zoo, adding more interest to all of the roofs in the zoo. So I ended up coming up with this design, and I thought it looked pretty neat for kind of like a fan ventilation piece. Um, and decided that I would just add a couple of those onto each of the roofs in the zoo, and it looked pretty neat, I thought. These doors for the peccaries to use to access their pens. Just wanted to bring them down so they really looked a lot more like animal doors. And I meant to go back and add something that would make it look like you could slide the door shut from the top. But I actually never did go back and finish that. So that's something I might still go back and add just because it's going to bother me that it's not really done. So you may have also seen that I added a door for the keeper to access the yard. And I actually had trouble with this before. I whenever I would put an actual door on that opening between the inside and outside area of the habitat, the keeper couldn't get through it. I don't really know why. I don't know what I was doing wrong. Maybe the door frame itself was too low, or the door frame that I had built was too narrow. I'm not really sure, but the keeper couldn't get through the door to access the yard. So I built this keeper door out of the wooden door and just propped it open so that it looked like the keeper was, just had left the door open and then could easily access the entire habitat. For this water fountain, this drinking fountain, I had actually already used one similar to this that a creator had made on the Steam workshop, John Arrows. In the previous build, actually, I'd used it in the Chinese pangolin build. But for this one, I wanted to try to make one of my own, and I really like the way that it turned out. I'm also using another blueprint item that I had used in the Chinese pangolin habitat, these rock piles from Cesar Creates. You might have noticed a funny thing that just happened a second ago when I zoomed way back out to the overhead view. So what had happened is I copied part of the rock piles, just a few of the individual rocks, and I and I pasted them into our habitat. And then when I tried to group those rocks together to move them, I couldn't find the arrows to be able to move them up or down or sideways or rotate them. So I zoomed way out to see what was going on, and it was because I actually still had them linked with the original rock piles. So they were still part of the group of rock piles of the original Caesar Creates rock piles. And so when I tried to move them, it was actually moving both of those pieces together. And I had done this before in the aardvark habitat as well, just kind of accidentally left things grouped together and then deleted something and deleted everything from that group. So then I would later on find something like mysteriously gone, and I wouldn't really know why, but it's because I had deleted the group that it belonged to. So for this, when I figured out what had happened, I just had to select the rocks that I had put into the habitat and then just separate them from the group. Also, at this point, I just have to say that I feel like this is the longest voiceover recording that I have done yet. I'm not really sure. I'd have to go back and check to be certain, but it feels like the longest one that I've done. So if you are still here watching and listening, thank you so much for being here with me, for checking out my videos, for subscribing if you have, for commenting if you have. I really appreciate all of it. So I'm not sure if I should skip ahead on some of this outdoor work or just try to keep talking all the way through it. But I'm going to do my best. And we'll see if I can make it through this entire voiceover section without switching over to music. And just going through and decorating the area outside was a lot of fun. I really liked using the different paint to try to make it look realistic. So there's sandy spots, but also more darker spots with the dirt, just so that it looks like the peccaries have paths kind of that they naturally walk along or more regularly take through their area. I also really love all of these dead branches and dead tree pieces, and I just like to scatter those around the habitat because I think that the peccaries would just kind of stomp around and dig up any plants in their habitat and create a lot of dead branches like this. And so then I wanted to add a more custom look to the barrier. So I used these wooden posts to make a custom barrier piece and then just carried that all around. You can see here that this piece that I made rotates from the center, like I was talking about earlier with the wood pieces for the building. And I don't know if it's because of these particular pieces do that or because it's pieces that are grouped together, but these ones are rotating from the center. So I have to rotate each piece into the angle that I want it to be in. I kind of just eye it out to see if it's at the right angle, and then I have to move it into place. So that's it for this build, and I have another cinematic video for you just to take a tour of our collared peccary habitat. And up next, we should be moving over to the giant Galapagos tortoise. Thank you so much for watching.